On today's show, Darrell and I talk about how do we know if our pre-pitch routine is working. Welcome back to Strategic Baseball Podcast. It is now the year 2021, and we hope that everyone had a great holiday season. Darrell and I look forward to getting back on a more regular schedule now that all the holidays and stuff, it's gone through. We're going to release a new episode every Friday from here on out, so keep checking that out. Hey, recently, Darrell and I were on another podcast with Jonathan Gellner, Ahead of the Curve. So that was fun. Go ahead and check that out, and definitely give Jonathan Gellner's podcast a follow, subscribe, and consume his content. He does a great job over there. So anyways, on today's show, we're talking about how do we know if our pre-pitch routine is working. Geoff and Darrell here, and we are a part of a group of baseball instructors and coaches that you probably have never heard of before. We don't rely on cookie-cutter evaluation to assess and judge baseball players. We don't judge players on physical talent alone. In fact, we do the exact opposite. We use strategic assessment and individualized training that we know can help any player get better. Because we are fighting against too many players and parents giving up on baseball too soon, we have to evaluate players differently. We have to do things more strategically. We don't have the ability to pick our players from a huge pool of talented players. Every day, we have to take players where they currently are and build on the skills they currently have. So, we focus more on building a strategic advantage mindset more than the physical talent early on. So how do we do that? How do we convince players to believe in themselves? If you ask some high school coaches, college recruiters, or pro scouts, they'll tell you that it's a waste of time. Some players just don't have it. Yet, it's happening every single day. It's happening through strategic assessment and hyper-individualized training that we call Strategic Advantage Baseball. This is Strategic Baseball Podcast, and these are our stories. All right, Darrell, as always, I'm going to let you kick this off. Today we're talking about how do we know if our pre-pitch routine is working?
Yeah, man, I think this is a great question that we get, and we get some great feedback from our guys here, because this is the point, as we talked about in that first show a little bit, about understanding that a lot of times when it's not working, it does manifest itself physically. And so we'll see breathing pattern changes. And I think that's why you see a lot of coaches talk about breathing, and breathing is important, man. Breathing is a critical piece of baseball, but it's not just the deep meditative breathing, man. It really is what your lack of controlling your breathing tells us as a player or as a coach or as a hitter facing a pitcher or vice versa, that if you're struggling with your decision-making process, then a lot of times, man, our brain, again, as we talked about last show, is not going to lie to our body. And I think when the game is so isolated and it's such an individual team sport, the batter is in the box by himself. The pitcher is literally standing in the middle of the field. He's the center of attention. So we can see everything. And now with video, where we can video everything, we can really break guys down. We can break them down, pitch to pitch, situation and count, and really look at them and see not just, kind of what they're thinking or what they understand about the hitter or the pitcher. We can literally see body language. We can see kind of the things that we see, the adjustments they make based on the situation and count. We can see the adjustments they make based on whether they think they can catch up with that pitcher's fastball or not. See, all of these different things that we can really, analyze now and see is one of those things that truly does become the kind of cues and clues that should either as a hitter or a pitcher kind of give you an idea of what's about to happen next. And again, we preach baseball here at Athletic Mission that it's about really having strategic anticipation. It's about you understanding what you're capable of doing, and then, okay, what does this hitter or pitcher probably know about me? And kind of really put yourself mentally thinking about the things that is more likely about to happen. Because the way we execute confidently under extreme pressure is when we mentally, strategically, and physically are on the same page, when the brain and the body is truly connected, and it's really you're mentally and emotionally present. So the decisions that you're literally making in that pre-pitch routine is gonna manifest itself in several different ways. But a lot of times we can see the pace of the game change. If you're in a good flow and you're making good decisions and you and the catcher are on the same page, or the coach and the catcher and all of you guys are on the same page, you just see a different type of body language, a different type of flow, a different type of tempo. And then as we see certain situations and counts, or maybe versus certain hitters, we start seeing that tempo change, the time in between pitches. We start seeing pitchers shake off more. We start seeing different things that either depending on how confident and how strategically that pitcher really pitches, versus that pitcher now, his indecision is why he's shaking off. It's not about, I got a better pitch to throw. It's more about, I don't want to throw this pitch in this situation and count. And those little kind of cues and clues is really kind of what walks us through what's working or not. Is he tipping pitches? Is he setting up differently? See, all the things that we talk about in the baseball world as coaches are really starting to study pitchers. And now as we talk about it, as we see video changes a lot of things. And so we can study and get as much data and information as we want. But the reality of it is how individual players use that data and how they trust and believe in their physical ability is really what manifests itself inside that pre-pitch routine. It's what, really creates that confidence or that lack of confidence in what they can do in certain situations and count. And again, man, it's the way we teach and preach baseball. If that pre-pitch routine is not working, then that's where we need to start. We don't need to go make physical adjustments until we see what's really happening. And again, the first question you and I ask our remote clients all the time, man, is literally walk me through your pre-pitch routine. Walk me through the decision-making process. How do you decide whether you're going to swing or not? How do you decide what pitch you want to throw? And is that the absolute best pitch to throw by velocity and movement to a certain location? And by us taking each one of these players and kind of reframing it into that decision-making process, then it kind of opens their mind to, you know what, man, sometimes I've never really looked at baseball that way, but when we break it down, it really is pitch to pitch and move to move. It's kind of like chess. You gotta react to what your opponent did. And if we're not seeing the game that way, if we just think, hey man, this is just some nuanced sequence the way I pitch and it's not working, then you can see why they would be struggling. And I think that's a lot of what it all kind of it culminates together, man. We can see body language problems. We can see breathing issues. We can see the indecision happen. And then we start tipping pitches or we become super predictable. So that's kind of, my big takeaway in this piece of it. When it's working, then you know what? The flow is good. The body language is good. You see them controlling their breathing. They really are setting up the same way on every pitch, man. They're not tipping pitches and they're not predictable. And then the opposite is true when it's not working, man. We see their body language just kind of different. We see them breathing and it's kind of inconsistent or a little bit uncontrolled. We see them struggling in between decisions on what pitch to throw or what they think is happening to them. And then they really do become predictable based on certain pitches they'll throw in certain situations and counts. And as pitchers, when we become predictable, then, the hitter starts getting an advantage and sometimes a huge advantage.
Yeah, man, getting that pre-pitch routine right is something that you and I are constantly stressing to our guys. And on the hitting side, I'm constantly talking to our guys after we've gone through the thought process about what we want to do and what pitch we think we can execute on in this situation account, we then need to channel all of our energy and all of our efforts and all of our senses into seeing the baseball. And this is where a lot of guys get it wrong. When you ask them what they're thinking about, they're still thinking about where their hands are, where their feet are. They're still thinking about, can I hit this pitch? They're still thinking about, I don't want this pitch. They're still thinking about certain counts. They're still thinking about things that they shouldn't be thinking about. This is where I tell them, man, we got to see the ball, man. We got to turn our full attention to what we are seeing. And this is going to allow us to enter kind of the flow. And this is what's going to allow you to play your best. This is what's going to allow you to slow the game down. And when we slow the game down, we are now obviously going to make better decisions at the pitches that we swing at and the pitches that we're taking. So based on what we're trying to do, again, in this situation account, based on what we know about ourselves and what the pitcher knows about us. Because like Darrell said, the way we execute confidently under pressure is when we are mentally, strategically, and physically on the same page, where the brain and the body are connected. Because hitters that are not seeing the ball or unsure of themselves, man, they're pretty easy to read, especially when you get to a certain level. And they're pretty easy to read too, based on the decision that they're making, based on, their pace of play and how they're reacting to pitches. Because guys will tell you when they think you're throwing fast. And I tell our guys all the time, don't let this guy, if this guy's throwing hard, don't let him know he's throwing hard. It's just a pitch. See it and let your eyes take over, and you'll be surprised how well you're actually able to kind of square up the pitch. But whenever I sit there and I'm like super rushing and I get out of control and I really act like this guy's throwing hard, then yeah, he's going to read that and he's going to blow it by you all day. So I tell our guys, hey, just act like every pitch is like, it's just a pitch. It's just a speed. You're reacting based on what you're seeing. Because hitting is so visual, and it's crazy when you get guys when guys get that piece, and they now are going to have that trust in their timing and getting the right pitch and their swing. That's that stick process that I talk about all the time, that their pre-pitch routine. So when things are working, guys are seeing the ball really well. They're swinging at good pitches. They're taking pitches they don't want. They're locked in their thought process, their approach. They're not giving off the body language that express to the pitcher that they're unsure of themselves that day. And then the exact opposite, whenever things are not going well. Man, that baseball looks like an aspirin. We start expanding our zone because we want to get the barrel on the ball. We start thinking about anything and everything that's not about the baseball. We start thinking about school or issues at home or girlfriend, whatever it is. And then we're also telegraphing, some of our frustration or maybe some of our fears and anxiety being up in the batter box at that moment.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about baseball too, man, is that the reality of it is you can do everything right and not get a great outcome. And your thinking can be right and you can do everything and just, you just take a bad swing or you just don't execute a good pitch. And so when we take it in the totality of it all, then we do got to be able to break it down individually. We can't just, whenever we're struggling, think it's a physical thing or think it's a mental thing or think, I just don't really understand what I should be doing in this situation and count. It's usually a culmination of all of it. And so when we kind of break it down individually and look at it, a lot of times what you and I tell these guys is that when it's not working physically and you're healthy and your pitches are pretty good, then most of the time it's not a physical capability problem. It's a strategy problem. That when you're out there in the heat of the battle and you really don't have a clue of what that guy's about to do to me, whether you're hitting or pitching, then, your ability to see the game happen and to have those, what we call real-time reactions, how we respond to that is usually the success we have on a baseball field. And I think that's a huge piece of this mindset stuff that we talk about, that, you really do got to understand how you approach each pitch or how you approach each at bat. And then how do you see the game in real time, man? Because the decision-making process in that pre-pitch routine happens right there, man. And so, again, that's the big takeaway I want people to have is that, we can't default straight to the physical piece of it. We got to look at the mental side, the strategic side, and seeing if them symptoms are kind of manifesting or exposing themselves through the physical side of it. Because a lot of times, man, we'll start tackling symptoms and the core issue might be a mental thing or a strategic thing. And so having a structured pre-pitch process, which I think is what we're going to talk about in the next few shows, really breaking down the mental, the strategic, and the physical side of it, will kind of now lay this framework out for you to kind of build a checklist, kind of build out your pre-pitch routine. And then as you really start adding the strategic component to it, you'll see how in season that from pitcher to pitcher or from hitter to hitter that you have to make those adjustments. And the more comfortable you're making those adjustments, it's really going to define the success you have as a baseball player.
Yeah, for sure. And, something, Darrell, that you and I both mentioned throughout this show and the last couple of shows that we want to make sure everyone understands is that the pre-pitch routine is, like you mentioned, it's mental, it's strategic, and it's physical, allowing us to have this brain-body connection. When you talk to people and read around on the internet, most people tend to think about pre-pitch routine as this physical like ritual or in the positive self-talk. But man, that strategic part of the pre-pitch routine is what hitters and pitchers are missing. That's keeping them from being as good as they can be, especially when they have to level up and play against competition that's just as good if not better. Hey guys, as always, thank you all for tuning in to Strategic Baseball Podcast. If you guys are finding any value in these episodes, please leave us an objective review and then head over to strategic-baseball.com and submit your email to join our circle to always be up to tune on what we got going on and what we're doing. So thank you all again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next show.